I woke up in a cold place. As I blinked open my eyes, I opened my mouth in a terrible cough. My entire body was so sore, and I cried out in pain when I tried to move. At first, I wasn't sure if my eyes were open because it was such a complete form of darkness. I began to sit up, but was stopped by something. I was confused and lifted up my arms. They went up about a foot before they were stopped by some invisible force. I was suddenly aware of my shoulders being squeezed. With a terrible realization, I realized I was trapped in a box. Maybe a coffin? Had I been buried alive? I banged my fists against the top of the coffin, desperately crying out for help, screaming that I wasn't dead. I couldn't have been dead. I tried kicking the coffin, thinking that it would break and I could dig my way out, but then I discovered I had been buried in a metal coffin. I began to run my hands down my body, looking for anything that could help me. I found a tie around my neck and knew that I had indeed been buried, probably wearing a suit, which was odd since I didn't remember owning a suit. There was a pillow underneath my head, and I thought that I could smother myself if it came to that. My hands went down my body until they came to my thighs. I was wearing a belt. Of course, the suit wouldn't have been complete without it. I looped my fingers around it and tried to undo the metal clasp and pull it off, which was difficult in the darkness. Finally, I succeeded in taking my belt off. I quickly began slamming the belt buckle against the sides of the coffin, creating a loud clanging noise. My only hope was that somebody would hear. A drop of sweat slid down my forehead. I coughed. I was aware of it becoming more difficult to breathe. The air suddenly seemed stuffy. I tried to wiggle around, but my shoulders only pressed against the sides harder. I tried kicking the top of the coffin even harder in the hope that it would miraculously spring open. I quickly realized that I was using my limited air supply. Visions danced before my eyes. I saw the accident that had led to my supposed death, the heart attack at the top of the stairs. The vision changed into skeleton hands, reaching for me. I screamed and began to scratch at the coffin with my nails, which quickly became dulled and pulled back. Blood leaked from under my nails and fell onto my suit. I tried to force myself to remain calm. If I kept freaking out, I would use only my limited air supply and suffocate. I ran my hands across the smooth surface of the coffin. A tear fell from my eye as I realized I was gonna die here. There was nothing I could do. No! No! I began to scream at the top of my lungs as I sobbed. I could feel the crushing weight of the earth all around me, and claustrophobia set in to make my feeling of hopelessness even worse. I pounded the top of the coffin with all my strength, and to my surprise, the lid actually came open. I continued to lie there in disbelief when the lid began to swing shut. I put my hand up to stop it and quickly stood up. I found myself standing in a hole about 5 or 6 feet deep. The night sky loomed above me, with many shining stars. "Thank you," I whispered as I looked up. I climbed out of the hole, leaving the empty coffin behind me. When I finally crawled out, I saw my tombstone. Realizing that not many people got the opportunity to read their own epitaphs, I decided to read mine. Under my name, it read, "Born July 26, 1968. Died August 5th, 2007. I looked around and wondered why my grave had been dug up. Why was there nobody around? I stretched, still not believing what happened. I even pinched myself to make sure that it wasn't a dream. I began to walk out of the graveyard. As I hurried past rows of tombstones, some old, some freshly dug, I wondered if there was anyone else here who had been buried alive. I was relieved when I finally saw the exit, and walked even faster. "Hang on, who are you?" An angry-looking graveyard security guard was walking over to where I stood. "Do you know it's midnight?" "Sir, please," I said quietly. What's the date today?" The man looked confused, and then he told me the date. A cold feeling filled my body, and I just ran away. I ran, leaving that man even more confused. He would never know what had just happened, or who I was. I only wonder who it was that dug the hole to free me from my horrible prison. The date was June 26th, 2014. I sit and peer silently at the moon-bathed tombstones. They reflect the soft, blue light and appear to me as special obelisks signifying a life that never quite reached its potential, one that never had a chance to realize, a lifetime of hope. They weave for me a somber song, singing of all that once was and will never be again. They are monuments to the dead, yes, but they are also monuments to the passing of time. With each sudden step the years take, we leave another piece of ourselves behind. In this single moment it takes for us to turn our heads and glance upon the past, it has already become unrecognizable. In the same motion of darting our eyes to look forward, the future has become terrifying. We live on ever-changing lands, and the land does not welcome us. The fortunate ones leave a tombstone. The unfortunate fade into dust. I gently slide my hands over the weathered granite. The smoothness communicates something deep within me, as if it were my own bones I feel beneath my fingertips. I run my palm over the eroded markings, etched into this final page of someone's life. They tell me they were loved. They tell me they will always be remembered. I would feel assured if the names of each had not long ago been filed off by the sands of the earth. With the tip of my finger, I trace intricate patterns on the face of the stone. I whisper foreign incantations, just light enough to hear over the ambient sounds of the night. The moon is bright above me, bright enough that I can see the stones beneath my feet begin to gently tremble. With growing desperation, I raise my voice and repeat my mantra. The earth responds in kind. I raise my hands to the stars and begin to scream exotic words that I hardly understand. I hear the muffled sounds of wood coming apart, and the earth beneath me begins to shake violently. The moon darkens, and the world around me becomes as black as void. With all of the confidence and fortitude I can summon, I bellow one final command to the skies. The earth before me parts just as the Red Sea did before Moses, and from the depths a stranger rises to greet me. Ravaged by nature and the infernal passing of hours, the stranger I see now holds little resemblance to their original visage. As this abandoned soul stands upright before me, it looks into my eyes with deep dark sockets that once held their own light. I stutter one simple question. What is your name? In a hollow voice, whose origin I can't quite discern, the stranger replies, The insects and the sunsets have taken my identity, and so shall they take yours. The stranger begins to shake and spasm. The incantation does not last long. The stranger is already falling back into the deepest slumber. As he descends back into the earth, I whisper one final question. What will become of us? The earth begins to shift back into its natural form, and the stranger is being quickly reburied. Before the stranger is lost forever, I hear one last reply. We will be forgotten. With all said that needed to be said, the quiet night returns to its natural state. The sky brightens once more with the moon's soft, blue light. The earth before me once more is closed and sealed with the pact of centuries. I sit in front of the stranger's tombstone and await the light of day to wash over the graveyard. Before you read any further, I want you to know that I have not hyped up or altered any of what you're about to read to scare you. I am not easily scared, and what happened to me frightened me more than I have been in a long time. That being said, you might feel the same way after you read this. The information, locations, and dates have not been changed in any way. It is important for you to know I have been involved in ghost hunting for many years. I run tours at haunted locations for newbie ghost hunters and thrill seekers, and prior to the investigation, we have a short Q&A session. At these functions, it's almost a guarantee that someone will ask me if a ghost can follow them home. I used to say something along the lines of, I don't see why not. They can be bound to certain areas, but many spirits come and go as they please. But you probably shouldn't worry yourself. One night, after an investigation of a Swansea, Massachusetts residence, changed the way I felt about that answer. The investigation was conducted as normal, and after we were done, the equipment was broke down, packed into the van, and off we went. While driving back to Cranston, Rhode Island, to where our cars were parked, we discussed how we felt the night went. Nobody had any eerie feelings. We all agreed that it felt quiet, and we could only base any further conclusions after what we could find in our evidence review. It was shortly after 1 a.m. when I got to my house in Attleboro. As soon as I walked through the door, I put my equipment case at the base of the stairs to my room and climbed into bed. I then proceeded to have the worst nightmare that I've ever had. The dream happened like this. I was alone. It was a dark night with a clear sky. The moon and the stars were visible. Although I had no light to use, I could still see what was ahead of me. I was in a labyrinth of some sort, walking deeper and deeper into the winding pathways. The labyrinth had tall, overbearing walls with small glass windows, just big enough to see through. Every time I would look at the windows, a skeletal face would stare back at me on the other side. It was like the walls were hollow and something was following me inside of them. My heart would race if I looked at the windows, so I kept my eyes forward and focused on the maze. I finally came to the center of the labyrinth. There was an oval-shaped tomb-like building with a barred door on the front with 2 separate keyholes. Subconsciously, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a key. As I looked at the key, a hissing whisper came about in the background of the dream saying, "This key has one purpose. This key can unlock this door." I put the key in the first keyhole and unlocked the door. As I opened the door, it was dark, but there was a faint glow of orange light that I could see from the top of a spiral stairway. As I began down the stairs, I encountered this cloaked, starved skeletal monster. Its skin was stretched tightly across its face. It had very small patches of long straggly hair, and as it held up a lamp close to its face, I could see more clearly. Its eyes were fixed on me and it smiled, revealing a few black teeth. At this point, I ran back to the door. I tried to lock it, but the key wouldn't work. I remembered it saying that the key could only unlock the door. I started to trace my way back through the maze. Its voice became louder in the background as I unleashed it from its tomb. I can't remember what was being said because I was running for my life. I finally came to the exit of the maze. There was a short road that I followed that came to the driveway of a large mansion. I thought I was safe for a second, and as I started towards the house, the figure appeared again at the front of the mansion gate. It held up its hand like a puppeteer would and conjured 2 large black dogs. The dogs chased me through the yard and I climbed the fence to get away. On the other side of the fence, I ended up in some neighborhood that felt familiar, but there was no one in any of the houses. I entered a coffee shop and sat down at a table. All of a sudden, there was a loud banging on the windows of the shop. The banging became increasingly louder until I closed my eyes, and at that moment, I woke up. Unaware and confused for a moment, I collected myself. Then I heard banging. I thought I was still dreaming. Unluckily, this was reality. All of the hinge windows to my room were open. It is impossible to open these windows from the outside. There is a lock mechanism that goes through the top of the window and into the wall, which then has a sliding lock bolt come through the side of that mechanism to keep the window from moving completely. Still slightly shocked, I closed all the windows. I then grabbed my digital voice recorder and hit record. I put the recorder on the edge of my bed and went upstairs to see if any more windows were open. None of them were. Upon returning to my room, I listened back to the recorder. While I was upstairs, I captured something, or someone, banging on the window again. It could not get it open this time, and with a frustrated hissing whisper, it said, "Damn you." The same voice from my dream. It was the voice of that monster in the tomb. Whatever was behind that door that I opened was in my room that night. It made its presence known. Since then, there has been no sign of it here. I heard its voice. I have drawn its face. I will not forget what happened. You may choose to believe this or not. It's up to you. But from now on, I caution everyone. If you dabble with spirits, you need strong willpower. They can come into your life, and when they do it, can be frightening. This happened the night of March 8th into the early morning of March 9th, 2014. This was written on July 9th, 2014. How boring. I sighed for the 100th time now. It was going to be a fun day, they said. You'll enjoy it, they said. But this is probably the most boring day in my entire collection of boring school days. It was time for our yearly Christmas party. Our school was known for its grand preparations and lavish events. But this year, there were some budget cuts due to the onslaught of a recent calamity. So our school decided to give some of the funds instead as charity. Or maybe because no one really is in the mood to party, like me. I was never a social person. I'm the type who'd rather spend the day reading and playing video games than mingling with others. But today was just different. Even for an introvert like me, the classroom seemed so deserted. Literally. I'm the only person here. Well, the program was supposed to start at 4 in the afternoon, and I arrived a little early. Too early. A full 10 hours early. So I just spent the entire day looking out the window, scribbling some random stuff. Outside, students are continuously arriving, and the entire campus was starting to be filled. Despite that, I wasn't able to spot any familiar faces. I thought some students in our block would come to school because our professor mentioned something about it at class. But it turns out, the whole morning was devoted to preparations and I had to spend the entire day idling around with nothing to occupy my mind. I glanced at the food stands outside. It then occurred to me that I haven't eaten any lunch yet. I went to a nearby burger stand and ordered something that takes 6 minutes to cook. I took a seat at a nearby bench and just stared at the clouds. In my idleness, I failed to notice that other people sat near me. It was only when I accidentally set my hand down near the shoulders of one of them did they catch my attention. "Oh, excuse me." I uttered an apology, but they didn't seem to hear me. They were just staring at something, wearing the same expression, SAD. When the food was done, I took it and proceeded back to the room. I shot another glance at the bench only to find out that the other people were gone. I didn't even notice them leave. They really didn't stand out and could have easily disappeared in the crowd. As I was walking back to the room, I received a text from a friend that she was staying at room 501. I answered back and told her that I'll just meet her there. Upon arriving, she asked if I knew any vacant rooms. I told her that we could stay at the room I was in earlier, 603. We decided to take the stairs instead of waiting for an elevator. We were chatting about some supposed ghost stories circulating our building. Along the first flight of stairs, I passed another group of SAD people. They were different from the guys at the bench, and I was throwing them a secret glance for at least a few seconds. Upon reaching the second flight of stairs, I was surprised at another group of SAD people, only this time, they looked exactly like the ones that passed us a few moments ago, even though I just saw them for a few seconds since they were in a hurry. Deja vu? My friend then called me from atop the stairs. It seems I was left behind. Inside the room, my friend and I continued talking about those ghost stories until she asked me what happened at the stairs earlier. So I told her all about it. About the group of people who passed us twice. What? You've actually seen a walking ghost? She exclaimed. Yeah, so stop talking about that stuff. Besides, I've already got 2 signs. She looked at me with eyes as big as saucers, pressing me for more details. I told her that earlier, I ordered food that took 6 minutes to cook. Then she met me at room 501. 5 plus 1 equals 6. I glanced at the clock. It was 5:45. I asked her how long we've been talking, and she said that we were there for 2 hours now. I grasped my mental clock and recalled that we had only been there for 45 minutes at most. Outside the building, the parties were now in full swing. We passed by a photo booth, and my friend urged me to take a photo together. We were told that another group was inside and wasn't finished yet, so we decided to move along. I then thought that the group inside was composed of 6 people who would come out at 6 p.m., to which they did. We explored the various booths and stands throughout the campus before going home at 8 p.m. While exploring, I still saw a bunch of SAD people. That day gave me a combination of 666. I tried looking for answers on the web in the library, but came up short. I asked my friend if she can find any reference to the connection between the numbers and the SAD people, but she wasn't able to find anything until we met again when classes resumed. She told me that sometimes, when the mind isn't too busy, it can intercept glimpses of spirits wandering around the earth. They were souls that cannot go to their destined place above or below. Contrary to the belief that ghosts hide in dark, abandoned places, they actually prefer huge areas like our campus. They can easily blend into crowds and no one would notice that they're dead, unless they had an ability of sorts. Once seen, they can suggest suicidal thoughts and distort your sense of time if you're caught off guard. I was probably able to see lots of them because I was thinking of such notorious numbers that they can use as a catalyst. I asked her how come I wasn't harmed in any way aside from distorting my sense of time, and she told me that it was because she was around me that time, which renders me less vulnerable. So always be sure to occupy your mind with something when you're bored. And whenever you go, whether a mall or a hospital, make sure you always have someone with you.